You make the part, it goes on the rocket blasts off, and you're just like, oh, I did it. Right here in America. Boom.
Are you ready? All right, let's go.
Manufacturing is sexy. Sounds crazy? Just wait. I'm Z Holly, host of The Art of Manufacturing. Your behind-the-scenes look at how people who make stuff are trying to make it in their industries. If you've ever wondered how to build a brand, a business, or just a better mousetrap, tune in and enjoy. Hey, friends and fans of The Art of Manufacturing. It's been a while, and I'm so glad to be back. Have you missed me? We'll be launching season 3 in 2 weeks, but in the meantime, I just had to jump in with a little bonus episode. I had a great conversation with Titan Gilroy about his incredible journey from homelessness and prison to his great success as an owner of an elite CNC shop and a television personality. He's doing a huge amount for manufacturing in the U.S., which we'll hear about in a minute. But meanwhile, I think we have manufacturing all wrong in this country. And we talk about some of this in our conversation with Titan. But before we start with the interview, I feel compelled to do something a little bit different. I've been thinking about these things for a long while, and I know normally I do a really short, brief intro before the conversation, but forgive me. I am going to share some of my thoughts for a few minutes before we start, because this is really important. I'm going to bust 7 myths about manufacturing. It's really exciting to me that manufacturing is playing such a huge part in the national conversation. And at the same time, I think that we totally don't get it. I don't think the president gets it, but I don't think the rest of us get it either. You know, we all as society want manufacturing jobs. A Gallup poll last summer said that America's most popular solution for creating jobs is to keep manufacturing from going overseas. 58% of them said that that was more important than things like lower taxes and reduced government regulations. So clearly people are willing to sacrifice for this. So at the same time, I think that we have this love-hate relationship with it. We don't see it as really being about us. Most people in America just think, oh, well, it's for jobs, for other people. Meanwhile, I don't think that manufacturing is just about jobs. And I think we have it all wrong. So first of all, we talk a lot about the biggest risk to American manufacturing is outsourcing. And I think it's something totally different that we're not talking about. It's the silver tsunami. And that's about the baby boomers getting older. Baby boomers own nearly half of all privately held companies with employees in the country. And only 15%, actually less than 15% of the CEOs that are going to be retiring have a plan to pass it on to the next generation. And the rest of it, very few will ever sell, and usually to overseas interests. So basically, like half of the companies that are employing people, and this is really impacting manufacturing, are just going to disappear. And so how are we going to deal with this? This is a huge national emergency, and we're not talking about it. This is $120 billion in payroll at risk. And so we need to do something about this. And at the same time, you know, a lot of people talk about manufacturing being dead. And unfortunately, what that does is that people don't want to work in manufacturing. They don't want to learn skills that are good for manufacturing. They don't want their kids to work in manufacturing. So it doesn't help us when we promote this sense of manufacturing as a dead-end industry. Of course, that said, there are challenges, but the exports of U.S. manufactured goods have quadrupled over the last 25 years, mostly due to productivity and advanced technologies. So part of the problem is that people don't want their kids to, get their fingernails dirty, and, they don't want their kids to do that hard, dirty labor that they used to do. But the factory floors aren't like they were decades ago. I mean, if you go into SpaceX, for example, you can just eat off the floor. It's just gorgeous, super high tech. And manufacturing jobs are really good jobs. The average factory worker in the U.S. makes something like $77,000 a year annually with pay and benefits. That's 28% higher than the average U.S. employee. And it's also a great path for upward mobility because many studies have shown that more than 81% of manufacturing jobs don't require work experience for an entry-level position. So you can actually get involved in it. That said, okay, myth number 3, there's a job shortage. There is some job shortage, but there's also a skilled workforce shortage. The reason why we're having so much trouble is because there are actually open jobs that are not getting filled. A lot of low-skilled factory jobs have gone out of the country over the last few decades, but the current industry has been finding it really hard to fill current manufacturing job openings. There was a study or an article a couple months ago that I read that 71% of recent hires in Connecticut lacked technical skills. And in the Midwest, almost half the applicants couldn't pass a drug test. So this is crazy. We're saying that we don't have enough jobs, but meanwhile, there are all these jobs that are going unfilled. And going back to the whole silver tsunami thing with the baby boomers, 27% of all manufacturing workers are over 55. And so there's going to be, in the next less than a decade, we're going to see this huge wave of 3.5 million skilled workers retiring. And very few skilled workers are ready to take their place. So ironically, meanwhile, like employees of baby boomer companies might be finding themselves out of work, there's an estimate of 2 million jobs that are going to go unfilled in the next decade. I think we really have this opportunity to employ Americans, but the real challenge, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the interview with Titan Gilroy, there's lack of interest, there's lack of employability, lack of skills. We have to invest in this workforce training. The 4th myth that I want to bust is automation is bad for manufacturing and for jobs. That's a really sticky one because obviously automation will have a lot of impact on jobs. There's this huge debate raging whether automation will kill more jobs than it will create. And I'm not going to wade into that right now, but we did also have a great episode, a couple of them, one with Rod Brooks from Rethink Robotics, and then also with Nick Pinkston of Plethora, and we talked about automation and skills. So those are really awesome episodes to listen to. But there's no doubt that employment is changing really fast, and the biggest challenge we have is to adapt at the speed that those changes are happening and to make those those jobs accessible to a broader range of the population. And I'm optimistic that automation will be a positive trend long term. I think that over time, as productivity frees up people to add more value in better ways, there's so many different market opportunities and problems for people to solve. So skills are an issue. But new technologies don't always require more skills. Some are tools that enable non-technical people to cross over and do the work of much more skilled experts. So like, Plethora, for example, in a previous episode, you don't have to be an engineer to design a part in CAD, and it will give you recommendations on how to make it more manufacturable, how to reduce the cost. It'll give you a cost estimate right there as you change it and virtually tinker, and you push a button and then you get your part in 3 days. Daiquiri is a company that has these smart glasses using augmented reality that enables workers to, it kind of augments their work with instructions, so it reduces the need for training as well. So I think that if we play our cards right, use technology to make it easier for people to enter the workforce and to augment, it'll just create more opportunities. And the truth is that we can't compete with overseas if we don't automate, because all these jobs have gone overseas because of we just can't compete against the low wages overseas. So the companies that really need to worry about automation are the ones that depend on low wages. And China recognizes that because their labor costs are increasing. So preemptively, they're investing really heavily in robotics. In fact, they're using our own plan, the U.S.'s plan, to become a leader in artificial intelligence, and we're not. Meanwhile, the U.S. government has run the other way and has been deeply cutting our programs in artificial intelligence. So if we're going to be competing globally, we have to invest in these technologies, or we're just not even going to be on the map. Now, so we're talking about jobs. This is the 5th myth that I want to bust, that manufacturing is just about jobs, and it's not. Jobs are important, clearly, and the thing is, we often only measure jobs on the factory floor, and we're missing the biggest benefits of manufacturing. So just from an economic growth standpoint, manufacturing is an engine for the rest of the economy. There was a study by Mabby done that showed that every dollar invested in manufacturing, another $3.60 of value is generated elsewhere in the economy. So manufacturing, if you count that, it directly and indirectly accounts for about a third of the U.S. GDP. So it's really a really important part of our economy. Now, putting even that aside, where is the innovation? The innovation is always where the manufacturing is. New hardware entrepreneurs usually learn the hard way that an engineer needs to be on the factory floor as you're starting to ramp up the production the first 4 months or so. And that's hard when your facility's in China. And you've also, personally, I've seen, design iterations and product development is so much easier when you have direct access to the production process and you understand the production process and you have those conversations. And that's like a whole other go down that path. But, usually if a big enterprise creates a plant overseas, they usually start relocating at least some of their engineering and product development. And then eventually they establish big research clusters. That's how places like Taiwan, Bangalore, Singapore, and other cities, they've become global innovation players. When you have the production there, then you want the product development. And then once that happens, the intellectual property production moves overseas. And all the research and development, we lose, the U.S. loses a core part of our competitive advantage. And I apologize, this is a very U.S.-centric rant here. But, I'm surrounded by this, and it's quite frustrating to me. And there's another reason why manufacturing is important. Just think about keeping the means of production domestic. We would never allow ourselves to be dependent on foreign sources for food. The oil crisis back in the 70s, that was, we felt that very acutely when we did not have control over the resources that we needed. And so imagine, what if we didn't have the capability to manufacture our own goods anymore? What would remain here in the U.S., even if we don't create a single extra job? And we will, and we are, but we have to keep investing in a vibrant and productive manufacturing sector. Okay, myth number 6. We can just bring manufacturing back. And the truth is that over the last 3 decades, the manufacturing jobs have just dropped in this country while our industrial base has moved overseas. And we can't compete on wages, and we probably don't want to, but we probably don't have to, which I'll mention in a second. But countries that value manufacturing have just been investing in R&D like crazy. And we still in this country have industries that we are the leaders in, aerospace, advanced materials, biomedical innovations. It's true, fair trade is really important, but we need something that we want to protect. And so we need to be investing more. Unfortunately, since the 70s, we've been investing less and less in federal research. In fact, last year was the first time that the government no longer funded the majority of basic research in this country. And that terrifies me, to be honest. And then myth number 7 is that we can't compete on cost. And the truth is that we often can. If you look at all of the costs that go into importing products from overseas, there's a calculator. You can go to reshoringnow.org, and it's called the Total Cost of Ownership Estimator. And you look at everything from shipping costs, shipping time, inventory, quality issues, currency fluctuations, IP, etc. Manufacturing locally is often much less expensive. And in addition, there's so many more reasons why you want to manufacture locally. Imagine if you're a fashion designer and you need to stay ahead of the curve. Would you want to be able to go to your factory, know your factory, have that relationship locally, look at it on the production line, make changes if necessary, and then have it within a couple weeks? Or would you rather sit and wait for your product to maybe show up in 6 weeks on a container ship? And if you're lucky, you get what you wanted. So we can still compete. Ultimately, This is a really cool time for manufacturing. And thank you for listening to my rant, because I am so passionate about the potential of manufacturing. Gone are the days of those chasing the smokestacks. And sure, we should entice companies like Toyota to establish a new plant in Alabama, or Chrysler to bring its jobs back to the U.S. when we can. But the biggest strength of America is our entrepreneurialism. Okay, so given all that, I want to share something exciting that I just launched in my other role as founder and chief instigator of Make It in LA. It's a new program called Catalyst. We're building a diverse community of creators that want to manufacture products that matter in LA. If you run a brand or business that wants to be part of our Catalyst community and to get help partnering with local manufacturers, check out makeitinla.org/catalyst. The deadline to apply is April 15th. Okay, so back to the interview. Little side note, forgive us for the background noise. We were on the show floor of the West Tech show in downtown LA, and there were robots and water jet cutters and machinery all around us. We try to do the best removing the noise, but it's not like we were in the studio for this one. But I wanted to capture the opportunity and grab him while he was in town. Titan Gilroy is a true inspiration. He started on a really rough path, growing up homeless with a single mom, and he ended up in prison. But he turned around his life because of manufacturing. In addition to owning an elite CNC machine shop, he hosts a TV show called Titans of CNC. He founded a school for machining in prison and developed a whole curriculum and online community for a new generation of CNC machinists. I was curious to hear about his journey and what excites him about his career today. We also get his thoughts about how to turn around our manufacturing skills gap in this country. We hear about that and a whole lot more on this bonus episode of The Art of Manufacturing.
The people that I'm helping, they weren't just born bad. There's circumstances in their lives that may have contributed to it. So when I was living on the beach, right, with my mom and in the bushes and homeless and then getting beaten and stuff, I became a different person to react off of that. Mm-hmm. And then manufacturing allowed me to be who I was created to be, like Titan, like the manufacturer, you know what I mean? So it's like, I wanted people to understand that I could relate to the inmates because of not only that I had been in prison, but I understood that you can be a good man even though your mistakes, the mistakes don't have to define you.
Were you born with the name Titan?
Yes, my sister's name is Athena, and everybody thinks that I made it up, and I'm just like happy I wasn't 5'2" with the name, right? So, yeah, it worked, right? And with the company and stuff, it just worked. So.
Absolutely, that's great. Yeah. But tell me a little bit about the company. So you've been a really accomplished CNC machinist, and you've built these businesses. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah, so I started my company back in 2005, and it's gone through, growth, and I lost everything at one point and built it back up. And it's been awesome, ever since I walked in, I've always had pride, right? I've always been like honored to be on a machine. And I told the story today about, being in prison and being a failure and failing at so many different things that finally when I was in front of a machine and nobody was judging me, they were judging me based on the quality of parts that I could make and how efficient I could be. It was like a second chance. So I've just always poured into that to be the best I could be at that. And that passion is what's resonated to help me get my customers, to help make the TV show, to be over here and speaking. It's the same passion for manufacturing. And I think people identify with it because most people in their shops, they're not excited, So when they see somebody excited about CNC machining and running fast and solving problems, they love it. Tell me a little bit about the path. You were in prison, and then now you've become the successful.
So I was in prison. I got out. I got a boxing contract from Top Rank Boxing, and there was just something. Ever since I was young, I was getting into street fights, and
so
a lot
boxing
of them,
came after.
Boxing came before and after prison.
Oh, okay.
So, after I did my 3-year minimum for my 16-year sentence. I got out because Top Rank actually gave the parole board a letter saying they were going to give me a contract. So I went to Vegas, but I ended up getting in like another fight and this and that. And sooner or later, I just walked away from the whole sport. I didn't want to hit anybody anymore. I didn't know what manufacturing was. I walked into, a CNC shop for $9 an hour, and it just changed my life immediately. And all of a sudden, I was like, the better I run these machines, the more that I do to excel in this company, the more I can make money and actually pay my child support and pay rent and stuff. And then all of a sudden from $9 an hour, I went up to $14 an hour to $16 an hour and bought myself a car. And then as somebody who's struggled in life his whole life, all of a sudden I had things I didn't want to lose, right? So I want to make that car payment. I want to make that rent. And in 2 years later, I had $28 an hour, and
Wow.
I was the shop foreman and making it happen. And eventually, I started my own company.
Because I can imagine if you're making that good money and you never had that money before, it'd be easy to live high on the hog.
Oh yeah,
And not
I did,
just-
right? So I mean, you have to have that tenacity and that grit and everything. And got kind of lost in it. Then the economy collapsed. I almost lost everything. It regrounded me. And from that point on, I've been 100% dedicated to education and making a difference. And I have a great CNC shop. I have a great company and team, and I don't take anybody for granted. And I think it's part of maturity in life, but it's maturity as a shop owner, right?
Tell me about that time when right before you started your business, and you had worked at 2 different other businesses, right?
Yeah.
Help build those up.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
What I would say is that, even in running a different company and having the world promised to me and building a shop and then having somebody say they're going to sell the company instead of fulfilling obligations, I would say that when I had my own shop and I had 50 employees and I was watching it all happen and I was looking up at my roof, I understood that I was a man that could stand in peace with turmoil surrounding me because of the experiences I had through the different businesses and the struggles and the stress and going through all of it. It had prepared me to have my own shop. So I have no education. I have no I didn't go to school for anything, for business or anything, but by running these other companies, it gave me the experience I needed to later make it through with my own shop in the most difficult things I could imagine going through. Right?
Blessing in disguise.
It was a huge blessing in disguise, and it was the only reason I made it through. So I tell people all the time, you've been abused, you've been this, you've been that. Everything that you see as a negative, and you carry that with a chain. You got to break that chain. It's a matter of your mind. You got to look at the chain and know that because of what you went through, you are uniquely qualified.
Every person has their own unique experience, and it really does. It breaks my heart when you hear kids being told that, you have to follow this path.
Yeah.
You have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, engineer, as opposed to building your own stable of
What people aren't understanding is that just because they failed in school or failed like I did, I got F's in school because I wasn't driven. I would rather go surfing than go to school, right? But in manufacturing, I found something that I cared about, taking something from nothing and building it. It had value. People lifted me up because of it and praised what I did, which made me feel good and gave me confidence, right? And these kids who have done bad and been in gangs and are told that they can't be anything, all of a sudden they come in and they make something, and then that part gets put on a spaceship and it goes to Mars. I mean, that's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
Right? That one thing about CNC, I'll tell you, there's no heroes anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we want our kids to be in manufacturing, but it's not on TV. We don't see it when it comes to actual manufacturing. You know what I mean? So
it makes
that's
me makes me so frustrated.
Yeah.
I feel like there isn't this appreciation. We talk about how we want to bring manufacturing back, but nobody actually wants the jobs. Nobody wants their kids involved in manufacturing.
It's frustrating for me because skills gap, but what are we teaching our kids? How do we actually compete as a country? We're not doing enough. I feel like people are taking the easy way out. Like there's a standard in manufacturing, and NIMS made it, and I'm so against it because they don't keep upgrading it. And I'm like, either they're going to get so frustrated with me and then upgrade it, which will be better for the kids, but I'm being that guy out there that's on TV and on social to say, we have a problem. All these fancy dinners and conferences and everybody coming to a show and being excited, that's all good, but shops are struggling to make payroll. They're struggling with kids coming into the shop that can actually lift them up and help them to make payroll and be successful. And although we're educating them, we're not educating them with the right stuff. and it's not fair to the kids, right?
So how are we doing it wrong?
We're doing it wrong because if our society says that a school has to basically abide by this standard and go to this standard, and you're not going to get funding unless you do that standard, and the teacher knows that that's not what he wants to do, but he has to do it, that is a problem because that standard is 13, 15 years old. And companies are going out of business because they're not competing when they do compete and they solve problems, it's 5-axis, multi-axis, it's live tooling, it is advanced automation and crazy stuff, right? That's what we need to teach our kids. And they can get it, but people don't give them enough credit. These kids are growing up on phones, they're growing up on a computer and stuff. So what I do now is I teach them CAD and CAM on the first day. And within days, I put them on a CNC machine because it clicks. So it's just a different style of teaching. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to bring a curriculum.
So they're not even teaching the digital, the modeling.
Everybody believes that you need to run a manual machine first. That you need to feel the basics. That you need to feel the cut. That you need to do all these things that we did for 30 years. And I'll walk out here and there'll be a lot of people that'll still do that.
A lot of listeners that we have, everything from sort of hardcore aerospace to fashion and food.
Yeah.
And so some folks don't even know really the ins and outs of CNC. So imagine somebody who has an interest but doesn't know CNC. Tell us a little bit about what is it and what are if you're teaching somebody how to do it, what are the key things they need to know in order to do it?
So a lot of people understand that like manufacturing has been around forever. You know, it helped us win wars from building tanks and ships and everything. We outbuilt everybody. And we had a lot of manual machines and stuff. And manual where you hand crank the table so the tables move and the cutter engages and you make parts. And it is an absolute art and I have crazy respect for it. Both my grandfathers were machinists. Found out like later in life when I owned my own shop. That's where they come from and that's like in the blood and stuff. So that's manual machining, but CNC is computer numerical controlled. It's an enclosed machine that's like a manual, but through G code, you have like G and M code, you actually program something. So you just basically, I'll just say a couple codes. G1 is a linear movement. So we do G1, we start at X0, and then we just say X 15 inches at 100 inches per minute. And basically we press go and it just moves immediately at 100 inches per minute over to X. There's no hand cranking or anything. And we actually, because it's automated, because it's awesome, we're able to run multi-axis at the same time and machine parts at like not even a 1% of the time. Like it's not even comparable, right? So now that we're a nation fighting over scraps left over from outsourcing, the only way to compete is CNC. If you have 100 people that go out and look for jobs and they're qualified in manual, you might get 1 or 2 guys that actually get a job in a manual shop because the whole world has gone CNC. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you saying that you're going to teach everybody to go to a payphone right now instead of going on a cell phone because they have to understand like hitting the buttons and it's the same thought process. It's like, wait, we have a cell phone. Let's teach them the cell phone and then teach them an iPad and in 6 months we can be over here instead of spending so much time over here because the companies deserve it, the kids deserve it. We just have to take our blinders off and admit that we're not doing the right thing.
Hard to believe that we wouldn't. It makes no sense, right? Exactly. So you've created these educational online resources for people. Tell us a little bit about that.
One of the things that was very frustrating is that just nobody's created curriculum for all the schools. So when a college is like, oh, we want to get into manufacturing and we want to get this, this program going, what they have to do is they have to go and find a CNC machinist, somebody hopefully who has teaching credentials, and then basically bring him in, and then it's his job to create the curriculum because he's the lead, right? And they don't know, so it's based on his experience. So if you get somebody really good, you're gonna have a great program, and there's amazing teachers, they're all heroes, right? But there's a lot of teachers that just haven't been in the industry lately, and they're teaching and they have a heart for our kids and they're awesome. They just need some help, right? So what I've done is I've created Titans of CNC Academy. It's a free resource that is an actual curriculum. You can download Fusion 360 software for free, and the students can do it at home. They can follow tutorial videos that teach them how to design real parts that we use in the real world, and we're making in shops all across America and beyond. And they can actually learn all these things, so when they go to school, they can actually run the curriculum. So a school can download the curriculum for free, use it as their standard curriculum, and they can learn, what takes other people 2 years, they can learn it in 3 to 6 months and get on to bigger and better 5-axis things because they've already done it.
And then making money.
And they're making money.
Yeah.
So I'm not only giving them tutorials on how to do things, I'm teaching them how to quote, how to run a shop, I'm teaching the entire industry through tutorials how to be successful.
Awesome.
Anybody can go on there.
Who are your customers?
I can't tell you that, but I do. I'm just kidding. But I do a lot of aerospace work. Ever since I was young, I've been an artist. I got a great team that we've trained up. If you look at the top rocket builder that's going up to the space station, he's my customer for 10 years. You know what I'm talking about, right? And if you look at the owner of Amazon.com and his rocket company, he's one of my customers, So, I looked at what was going overseas, and to save my shop, I jumped into aerospace, and I knew that those parts were so critical, they were so difficult, they were not going to go to China. So I made a reputation to do everything that I do, from machining technical parts for big people. And you can have $1 million or $1 billion. That does not mean that you can make or hire people to run that machine. It is an art, and it takes a certain head and know-how to actually make that happen.
What's the hardest thing you've ever made? And you don't say exactly what it was, but more like what made it hard? What were you really proud of?
Every day I make parts for that rocket company. You know what the problem is? Is that the engineers have gotten to know me and my team so much that they don't give me the gravy. They don't give me the easy parts that a lot of other people, they give me the complicated Inconel, Monel, titanium parts with thin walls, with absolute, true positioning, and they're just like impossible parts, and they give them to us and basically need them in like 4 weeks.
What makes it impossible though?
Just the complexity of how they tolerance the part. And when you take a lot of material off a, say, titanium block, it's going to move on you. And when you take a strand of hair and you divide it by 30 and get down to 1/10,000th of an inch, those are the tolerances that we're dealing with.
Wow.
So you have to machine and hold and put pressure and then release it and have it snap into position so perfectly. And this is what makes it truly stressful. There is a rocket test that NASA's doing that is being done in 2 weeks, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They can't go to Home Depot to go get that part. So if you fail, you just cause $100 million in this and this, because we're depending on that part. You know what I mean? It's just everything's on the line, and you got 6 engineers calling you. But you make the part, it goes on the rocket blasts off, and you're just like, oh, I did it. Right here in America.
Amazing.
Boom.
If there's one piece of advice you can give entrepreneurs based on your experience, what would it be?
Everybody wants to have a shop. Everybody wants to, but there's something at the core that you have to understand, and you got to have confidence that nobody else can come in and interfere with it. And what was told to me a long time ago was, Titan, if you can solve a problem, if you can solve people's problems, and you can find a niche in that, you will be successful. So you have to have a belief in yourself and your niche and your product to understand that you're solving a problem and you're doing it in a way that other people can't compete with. And if you're solving a problem, people will be willing to pay for it.
Cool. Really good advice. I wish that we could talk longer, but we have a long line of people waiting for you outside. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
And we look forward to just looking at great things you're doing for industry, for people who, haven't been as fortunate as many of us. So
changing the world through manufacturing.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much.
Titan is such an awesome human, and he can teach us so much about both manufacturing and human nature. His story is a story of redemption. And what stuck out most for me is how becoming an accomplished machinist turned his life around. His new career made him feel valued financially and gave him a sense of purpose and the satisfaction of making things that mattered. I'm inspired how he's created the Titans of CNC Academy and making it public domain so anyone can learn. And I'll suspect it'll help turn so many other lives like his around. Meanwhile, we heard how far behind we are in teaching advanced machining. We spend so much effort and talk so much about saving jobs, but why don't we spend that effort in training our workforce for the jobs that are out there? We should be developing better curriculum and supporting the teachers in the schools in CNC machining so our kids and workforce are ready for today's high-tech jobs. We made it to the moon. This can't be that hard. Why isn't this our moonshot? What do you think we need to do to bring manufacturing back? How can we prepare today's workforce? And do you agree manufacturing is more important than just jobs? How'd you feel about my rant at the top of the show? Let me know. Send an email to feedback@artofmfg.com. Tune in 2 weeks when we launch Season 3. Our first episode features Kat Chen, the former head of operations for The Honest Company and founder and CEO of the direct-to-consumer fragrance company, Skylar Body. We talk about how to partner with manufacturers, how to raise venture capital, and the challenges of having a purpose-driven, all-natural brand. Don't forget to check out Catalyst and apply before April 15th at makeitinla.org/catalyst. Time to wrap it up for the Art of Manufacturing. Visit our website at www.artofmfg.com for more details and show notes. And make sure you're subscribed on iTunes or your podcast player so you never miss an episode. To chat with other like-minded makers, join the Art of Manufacturing Facebook discussion group. This podcast is produced by At Large and Dangerous in collaboration with the Make It in LA initiative and other partners. A big shout out to Peter Brandenburg, the producer and audio engineer. Thanks for listening to The Art of Manufacturing. I'm Z Holly, and remember, don't just make it, make it.